founders, engineers, and partners with the Gravity Group. If you haven't heard of the Gravity Group, you've probably ridden some of our work. So in 2021, we did about 660 feet of racer track. That was the smooth section on Racer when you rode it that year. We have a new product called Engineered Pre-Cut Track that I'm going to get into. And one of the trends that we see is you put it on and that section's fantastic, but it provides an interesting contrast to the track that was there. Whether that was rough or super rough, it just seems very noticeable. So that's one of the challenges that we have whenever we upgrade any type of ride. I am going to take you on a deep dive into the history of wooden roller coaster track today, and also talk a little bit about what's going on at our company the last few years and that kind of jazz. So I started with the Racer in 2021, but I'm going to backtrack a couple of years. 2019 is when we debuted Kentucky Flyer. How many people have been on Kentucky Flyer, Kentucky Kingdom? All right, that's a good show of hands. Did anybody dislike Kentucky Flyer? Any bold hands out there? We got one. Oh, Jess, come on. She's one of our team. Kentucky Flyer not only had one of the cutest airplane trains out there, but it also debuted our engineered pre-cut track. Okay, whatever. No, but it's actually pretty historic. So 2019 was the first year of that. COVID hit, and we didn't really know what everything was going to happen because the whole industry kind of shut down, and we're a supplier for the industry. So it was a little scary, but we felt like we could, keep rolling with what we were doing. And we couldn't travel. We had a team over in France starting on some work over at Parc Asterix that year. And we were able to pull them back right before everything shut down. And so it was a huge blessing to be able to work on something here locally that we didn't have to travel to, because as you know, travel was pretty much shut down. So Kings Island happens to be on the way home for many of us at our company, so it would definitely not be considered a travel situation. So fast forward to 2022, and we had a huge amount more of track. 2022, we had a little ride over here. It's called like the Beastie or something. It's like, the shortest wood coaster in the world. So yeah, the Beast, we worked with the park on that. We did about 1,200 feet of the track, and the park did an additional amount on it as well. And as you know, it really changed the Beast kind of forever. Hopefully you guys all like that change. I personally really like it. Thank you. Funny story is my wife, when we were dating, we rode the Beast, and she's had some shoulder and back problems over the years, and she's like, I will not ride that again until something significant happens to that ride. So she rode last year for the first time in 15 plus years, and she loved it. So, yay. Yay for technology. This past year we did a big stretch on the return run of Red Racer, and you probably have experienced that as well. So, yeah, give it up for Racer. As we go forward, we have a huge amount of track that we've installed this year. So in addition to the Racer, we've done 9 other projects this year, many of which you don't even know about that happen to be open or opening soon. And we just have to wait on the parks to announce whether they feel like announcing it or not. Some of the major ones you've heard of are Grizzly at Kings Dominion. Who here has been on the new Grizzly this year? Anybody? Yeah, Kyle doesn't count. No, actually, what do you think about it, Kyle?
It's a game changer. It's bearable now.
Bearable, game changing. So do you have like a bear game that you're creating down there in Kings Dominion? Sorry, Kyle, I gave you another idea. All right, so, and then also Megaphobia over in Wales is about to open. We did a huge amount of track on that ride. There's this other little coaster down in southern Indiana called the Voyage. Has anybody else been on Voyage this year? All right, that's great. So I have as well. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I think it's going to be fantastic. So just a really great year for Voyage for sure. As far as some of the other projects, you know, some of them have been announced, some of them haven't been. But those are kind of like the big three this year that we worked on. And it would not have been possible without a growing number of people in our team. But not everybody's here. I was going to give them a shout out. So we'll wait a few more minutes. So let's go in the Wayback Machine. So back in the day, a wooden roller coaster, think about like a side friction roller coaster, basically had wheels on the bottom and wheels on the side. It ran in almost like a trough. So there was a piece of board underneath where the wheels were, and then there was board on the side where the side wheels were, and it just kind of, you know, puttered around the track. Think Leap the Dips over in Pennsylvania. And as you know, back in the 20s, there was a lot of innovation for wood coasters. John Miller designed the first wheel and/or safety device to actually hold the rail or hold the train onto the rails. So all modern roller coasters that have any type of exciting dynamics, they all have wheels underneath the rail. So this track right here, it can roll back and forth a little bit, but I can also tilt it upside down because it has wheels underneath. So there's always a section on the wooden roller coaster, we call it the lip. You know, so your lip is where the standard modern wooden roller coaster, it actually, you know, pushes sideways on that lip. Underneath that lip is where the upstop wheel is that actually locks it onto the track. This is a little demonstration. I may or may not get to that. So if you look at over here, I have these little blobs of wood. These little blobs of wood are all different. Because wooden roller coaster track evolves pretty slowly, I'd say. So the first one we're going to talk about is, I'm going to put my microphone down for a second. But if you look for the checkerboard on the end of this rail, we kind of colored that to help demonstrate. That was fun. So why is it a checkerboard and what's all going on there? So back in the 20s, Pryor and Church and Traver all used a section of individual pieces of wood to bend their track into the proper shape. Back in the day, they didn't have the circular saws or other types of equipment that we have today, so you just kind of make the thing work as you're, you know, with what the tools you have. So the advantage here is that there's no cutting involved, and you're using the natural shape that the wood wants to twist and bend to create your shape of your track. It's actually pretty cool from a mathematical point of view as well, because you actually have a very fluid, continuous curve when you're using that philosophy. The challenge there is it's a lot of pieces to put together. Usually those are all nailed together after clamping, and it's a pretty labor-intensive thing to do. So you have, you know, the other philosophy was back in the day you had EDC and John Miller making more of the Outback coasters. The Outback coasters, basically you just take your board and you go horizontally with the board. You can bend it, make your hills. And then when you get to your turnarounds, your high turnarounds, you might take your board and bend it the other way, bend it left and right. And so to create that shape, you're actually just bending wood as well. A little bit of cutting to make it go from one track to the other track. But that was kind of the typical way to do that. Let me demonstrate what that horizontal track looks like here too. This one's not quite as easy to see, so use your, good eye. So that was primarily the way coasters have been built for, since really the 20s. Great coasters, custom coasters all used the horizontal boards. And with the advent of the circular saw, you can cut your horizontal shape into that in a curve and a straight and twisting, all that kind of stuff. It's a very versatile system. And what that does is it allows you to have fewer pieces that you have to put together. Then you're just nailing the boards onto the other boards, creating your whole track. Let me backtrack a little bit, just in case I've lost 50% of you. Each roller coaster track has 2 rails. We're looking at one of those rails at a time. So just that little part looks like an upside down L, or a 7 in some type of fonts. So back in 2000, the Germans were like, you know what, hey, let's take a look. Instead of making a wooden roller coaster track out of layers of thicker wood, how about we just make this big block of wood made out of plywood, and then we carve the perfect shape out of it. And so that's what this piece demonstrates here. It's literally a bunch of plywood fastened together and creates a nice strong piece of track. The problem or the challenge with that is you have a lot of pieces and you have a lot of waste. You have basically these huge chunks of wood that you're carving and you're using just only a small fraction of the amount of wood. And it takes a huge amount of time for the machine to cut that. If anybody's in manufacturing, you know that time is money. So all that has to be transferred to the customer. So there's only 4 of those coasters made, and they were basically take the plywood, and then at the ends you made steel connections. The steel connections then connect the rails together. So you're essentially kind of making a steel coaster out of wood, philosophy-wise. Great product, great shape. The shape is a perfect machine cut shape, and we enjoyed plenty of those rides, or not plenty of those, there's only 4, but enjoyed plenty of rides on those rides. So probably around 2017 or so, we were brainstorming, we're like, you know what, that historic way of having the boards vertically, there's something to that. If you think about a deck or a house, there's boards that are basically next to each other that support the top deck. Those are called joists. If you have a joist that's vertical, it's very strong. If you have a joist that's horizontal, it's basically a diving board, and you can have a lot of movement on that. And so we said, there's got to be a way to make the joists and use vertical layers of track. The problem with vertical layers of track in the John Miller days was there's no way to go up and down with those. And so we said, hey, let's take those that vertical string and we'll cut the shape, the up and down shape, into those vertical boards. And so we can have that really big string, but we can also have a perfect shape by cutting individual boards. If we're using the same boards as we would have horizontally, we use those vertically, it's not going to be a huge economical difference for the customer. So that's when we really started the development of what we now call engineered pre-cut track. So if we look at this last profile, I had walk-on music, that's what it would be. So if you look at that, you might have been able to see that the bottom part of the trail is vertical layers. There's actually joints as you can see how those joints are. So what we do is we essentially create a whole bunch of Lego pieces that some of those Lego pieces we build up into longer rail sections, send that to the site and install it, and then other times we might just keep them small and erect those Lego pieces on site to create basically a perfectly shaped track. Obviously the testament to smoothness comes in with your experiences on Racer and Beast and Racer, and as well again, you know. And so that's kind of how we came up with Engineer Pre-Cut Track. And this year we did a total of 10 rides, 6,500 feet of track, so a little bit more than the voyage length of Engineer Pre-Cut Track this year. So we definitely kept our team busy, and I think everybody's here now. We've got Hunter, we've got Thomas, Ben, where's Ben? Over there. We got Jess, Adam, and Brian, and let's see, did I miss anybody? Dan. So these guys have put in huge amounts of hours to make your lives happy, and so we give them a round of applause. So that is the quick history. If you look at some of the patents from the olden days, you'll be able to kind of see these different track sections of profiles. Obviously, this is a challenging venue to really show, you know, paper or presentation or things like that. But I wanted to make sure that you guys at least kind of see what this kind of different track systems look like and a lot of the pros and cons to the different systems. So I think I'm going to talk a little bit about trains just for a couple minutes, and then we'll take questions and answers. Or you'll take answers, I'll take questions. So in door number one, we have the traditional wooden roller coaster train. So as I rock this back and forth, you can kind of see how the different cars, you know, it's two individual cars connected by a hitch, going around a turn, and it works. What that does is it puts a big amount of force on the side, on that lip section, that little part of the L or 7. And so that's been how wooden coasters have been for a really long time. For any rides. Other rides had more of the what is typically called a single bench articulating car. So Pryor and Church did that. The first car is basically 2 axles, and the car behind it looks like a little bit of a trailer. And that's pretty good. Pryor and Church, you know, they still have some of those style trains around. Obviously, the other company made some like this for Mystic Timbers as well. And that's good. It's a little bit of a decrease of force than the traditional box cars, and that's because it doesn't bounce around as much. So it tracks more smoothly, so you have a little bit less impact debatably. And then for all those people who rode Kentucky Flyer and or other of our rides, we said, we like that idea. However, we know that wooden roller coaster tracks are made of wood, and they're not that strong. And so we wanted to decrease the force on the track as much as we can. So if you look closely here, it kind of looks like the last train, but there's this weird orange on it. The orange basically shows that the wheels are actually steering around the track. So that's what makes our Timberliner train, obviously it's what I wrote on my chest with the logo, a big deal, and a really, really great thing for wood coaster maintenance. I'll keep rotating this around like a hypnotic trick. So what we were able to do is between a traditional wood coaster car and the Timberliner, we decreased that wood, or that force on the wood by a factor of 3. So we have a third of the force on the wood. And that lip is the primary problem for maintenance for wood coaster trains. The maintenance guys are out there each morning trying to check on that lip, making sure it's all in really good condition. So if you have a high force, it's like a big hammer denting that wood through. There's this layer of steel, which I didn't talk about at all. So if you look at some of the sections I talked about earlier, they have a section of steel on the top and on the side, The steel is actually what the train runs on. The train does not run on the wood itself. So, so the wood coaster maintenance with the engineered pre-cut track, I feel like, with all the innovation that we and others have been doing, it's a little bit of resurgence of innovation for wood coasters. If you look at the total history, with our track and our trains, we feel like you can have a wood coaster, have that true wood coaster experience, and you don't have to worry about the high maintenance that has traditionally plagued wooden roller coasters, and unfortunately sacrificed some of those wood coasters to the wood coaster heaven. So we're here trying to innovate. We love wooden coasters. Our team is passionate about wooden coasters, and we're here to make every wooden roller coaster in the world better. Any questions? Have you thought about coming up with a track like RMC? Is that what your question was? Oh, collaborating with RMC? Not really. We like our product, and we like that our solution is a 100% pure wood product. And we feel like there's something about that wooden roller coaster track feel that's the soul of a wood coaster that's kind of lost in the other materials. Yeah.
So the boards make vertical underneath the lip. Imagine that helps with the vertical lateral forces.
Okay, the question is on the vertical track, it definitely helps in the vertical section. In fact, the factor of strength between this track and a horizontal track is 20 times stronger. So when you're talking about washboarding with basically you have your horizontal layers of track, and after a couple years, like anybody can retrack or ride with horizontal layers and it's smooth for 1 or 2, 3 years. After that, you can start to see how well it's doing as a track system. And because it's traditionally nailed together, those nails start to lose their bond between the layers. So that's a quick aside to the question. So vertically it's about 20 times stronger. For the horizontal track, wherever we have any twisting going on, right now we don't use the vertical track. We use a horizontal track, but we have a specially formulated adhesive that we put on some of the layers to keep that bond between layers for a longer period of time, or actually for forever. And so that actually increases our strength from the traditional track to a traditional horizontal layer track with what we call gravity goop. Not with car, but goop. And so that makes it a track that's 8 times stronger. So that gives us the horizontal, the lateral strength that we need for that. So usually the laterals on the ride aren't anything that exceeds what we want to do with the track. Yeah. Say again? Would we want to do a ground-up coaster with Kings Island? That's not a dumb question, but it kind of is. Of course, yeah, that'd be great. I think some of our junior coasters are kind of akin to the Woodstock Express, but a little bit more exciting than that. And then we also have big thrill coasters that go upside down. Let me take this one. How do we put so much airtime into small hills on roller coasters? Is that right? So airtime is a function of speed and the curve. So if you have a really sharp curve, like on a road or something like that, if you hit that going pretty fast, you might jump. That's essentially airtime. If you have a really big radius, and you're going over at the same speed, you're not going to feel any airtime. And so what we do is we say, okay, we're going to measure what that curve is, and we know what speed produces airtime. So we want to make sure that both of those match so that we can get that number right where we want it. We like to call that like formula fun. A little quick aside, I feel like a coaster in general without airtime is like a chocolate chip cookie without chocolate chips. Personal opinion.
How hard would put Timberliner trains on the Beast?
How hard would it be to put Timberliner trains on the Beast? I wouldn't take too much. You know, wood coaster tracks in general are compatible completely with the Timberliners. It's a pretty standard profile that PTC came up with many, many decades ago, and so most things are compatible with that shape.
What are the four coasters that determine the material?
What's that?
What are the four coasters that determine the material?
Oh, the four coasters with the German engineering. So you had El Toro, you have Wood Express over in Korea. You had Balder in Sweden, and what's the last one? No, the last is at Hyde Park. Yeah, right there. How long does a fix take? A fix can take anything from usually about 4 or 5 weeks to 8 months, depending on how big it is. You know, something like the Beast was a huge project, and so we removed structure all the way down to the ground. We added structure. There's another ride that we did within a few hours of here this year. There was just a few layers of track that were replaced, and so yeah, all over the place.
How many wood coasters out there have your
How many wood coasters out there have our Timberliners? I believe the number is 29. What's my opinion on Hades 360? I'm a bit biased, but I love it. It has some areas that aren't as smooth as others. You might happen to be seeing some new track on it sometime soon. But yeah, it was a really exciting ride. They had an opportunity to, basically it was kind of getting stuck on that hill out by the road, this Hades. And so after some iterations, we're like, hey, we could probably go upside down out there and really create a great ride and also a wood coaster that goes upside down. So that worked out really well, and we got our trains on there. And that ride went from a maintenance nightmare to a maintenance heaven. So it really was a really good thing for the park.
I have a two-part question. With this new design, do you feel the sky's the limit?
With this new design, do we feel like the sky is the limit? Yes. I would not say that we want to jump on a 400-foot wooden roller coaster right now. But yeah, the sky is pretty out there.
So do you think you can build a hyper woody with a loop?
Could we build a hyper woody with a loop? I'm not sure if I should say that too loudly or not.
It's actually somewhat related to your question. First of all, I love that you bring up Ryder Church and Traver. Now, it's very unrealistic to expect something like a crystal cyclone. But when you go into designing a new coaster, how do you balance what your philosophy is on balancing extreme with safe?
She gave props about us, harkening back to the classics like Ryder Church and Traver. She was wondering how we balance the extreme versus the safe. With our restraints, when we're doing new rides with our Timberliners, it's a class 5 restraint that's just kind of mumbo jumbo for super duper safe. And so we're not really too concerned about holding people in, even as low as 40 inches high, as far as passengers go. And so we have a certain G-force profile that we kind of, our limits, a certain amount of cushion and a certain amount of airtime. And that's what we feel comfortable with as designers. And we feel that, our rides have a good amount of balance of thrill. Other manufacturers obviously go a little bit more extreme than we do on some things, but there's a factor of comfort as well in there of having something that's safe, thrilling, and comfortable. Yeah. Favorite roller coaster that I made, says the young man with the Hades 360 shirt on. Yeah. That's like it's like, what's your favorite child? You don't really have a good answer. However, I have a few that just are really kind of great memories. So the Voyage at Holiday World, of course, the one that's given me the biggest wow. Some of those night you know, completely pitch black rides on the voyage are just really hard to beat. U2 piece, I enjoy U2. And then most recently, Kentucky Flyer, I just love that ride. I just love everything, you know, how it turned out, the trains, you know, I took my 4-year-old daughter on that ride. Turns out that media day happened to be take their kids' work today. So it was like, wow, that was like super win. But yeah, there's a lot of rides that we've done that are, you know, really near and dear to my heart.
I noticed while riding on the beast, like at night, you can see like sparks. There's obviously metal on metal. So you guys have to like put some kind of filler on the track or on the trains or anything to like create like fire, you know, protect the fire.
He mentioned that there's sparks on the beast when you ride it at night, and usually there's some type of lubrication to keep the sparks from happening. We have to actually talk to the park about what they do. Typically, we don't really see many sparks on our rides. Why do wind roller coasters use metal wheels? Is that your correct? Tradition. It's been adequate and very, you know, fine using steel wheels on steel track. When you have a situation where you have a urethane wheel or a nylon wheel on a track, you're replacing the wheels, the tread a lot. On our wheels, on a proper, you know, maintained track, they replace the wheel every few years, and so there's really not a good reason to switch. We do know that urethane wheels give a touch of a little bit of a smoother ride experience, but we haven't really seen the need to switch from steel. Are we planning to fully retract the wave racer? That is a question for Kings Island. How much more time do we have down in chat? 5 minutes, all right. Most difficult project gravity groups worked on. What do you think? I'm not sure. At Custom Coasters, Lost Coaster was probably our most difficult project to have done. Because the entire ride had to be done in about 6 months, including all the development for the trains, vertical lift, and the first magnetic brakes on the wood coaster. So I'll just say Lost Coaster because you know we were a part of that ride at Custom Coasters. Are you asking, can we do it on shipping timbers? Can we reprofile the first drop on shipping timbers? We can do anything that the park wants us to do. Yes. Oh, wait, we're adding inversion to shipping timbers, sure. Yeah, when we work on existing rides, what we do is a 3-part analysis. We go in, we take the acceleration to measure the G-forces, we walk the ride, and we ride the ride to evaluate what needs to happen. At that point, we go through and either survey or scan the ride's geometry in that area that we want to look with. So we're using digital data to create the new track shape. So we'll take that data, smooth it out, create a track that fits that perfectly. So I think I got one more question, and we'll hand it over.
Why did you choose to add a wave turn?
Oh, cool question. So at Park Asterisk, we added a wave turn, as the terminology can be said. Basically, it was a big hill with big air time at 90 degrees. Why? Because we could, and it was fun. We've had that question. When we put the first high five in China, the Chinese engineering review group was like, "Why did you do that? You know, that's not typical." And we're like, "Because it's fun." And he didn't really quite understand that. All of you guys understand that. So, yeah, thank you very much. If you have any other questions, I'll be around. I'll let you go.